Hello BookTube, and welcome back to my library tour for 2022. I'm going through all the books that I have now in order to give myself a visual record of what I have, and also for the side effect that always happens with library tours, which is to really get an eye on the shape that your book section is in. I found that's been true. I've done 2 library tours on this channel, I think, and both times it has been remarkably clarifying to actually handle every book and know what I have and what the doubles are and what I don't want anymore and what's not where it should be. I am, as you can see, not on a step stool. I just couldn't face the idea of it. We've gone to a new bookcase now, but I'm going to do a little bit of reaching rather than get on a step stool. I'm going to do a little bit of reaching for the Transwise books first, and then we'll deal with the books on the shelf. So the first one is a modern library volume. This is just fantastic. It's edited by Francis Godolphin, and it's the Latin Poets, an older volume that has just the way that you want to approach the Latin poets, the great Roman poets. This is just the way that you want to do it because, as you can see, the translations are all by different people. Names crop up over and over again, but styles change all throughout the book, and you really want that. So that you get a nice quick idea of whether or not you like the poet or the translator or both. Okay, then this next one is one of these little things. This is also Modern Library. This is one of the little splinters that they did off of Shelby Foote's enormous trilogy of the Civil War. Historian Shelby Foote did 3 huge volumes of the American Civil War. It took him 10 times longer to write than it took the war to be fought. And Modern Library recognized that's an undertaking for most readers, so they did little splinter volumes, and this is one of them, The Stars in Their Courses. This is just Gettysburg. Just the Gettysburg section of, I think, the 2nd book in the trilogy. Just a thin thing like that. I remember when these came out, when did this come out? 1994. I was working in a bookstore at the time. I wasn't, for some reason, the idea entered my head that I couldn't continue to review books if I was selling them. I don't know, maybe that would be true today. In the 21st century, maybe that would be true. In the 21st century, I imagine retail bookstore managers go a lot further than they did back then to simply tell their employees what books they have to push. And that you have to push those books, and you can't remain silent. You have to say, we are pushing this book. We as a staff are pushing this book, and you'll do that or you'll lose your job. I guess on paper that would have been a complete conflict of interest if I were reviewing books, if I were told to push something, but then again, it wouldn't have been, because if I'd ever been told that, I would simply have quit. I would immediately have quit. So I don't know one way or another, but this came out when I was in bookstores, and it was a very interesting thing to hand to. I noticed a lot of customers of mine, customers that I knew that would be coming in to talk to me, they were big readers of history, and they always felt a little guilty that they hadn't actually buckled down to read Shelby Foote's enormous thing. But it's this big, so, who has the time to do that? Not many working people have the time to do that. A lot of those customers were very happy for these little volumes so they could get a flavor. And I heard from quite a few of them. Once they bought this or The Stars in Their Courses was one of these volumes. I don't remember what the name of, there was at least one other, and I don't remember the name of it. I don't think I have it. But I heard from many customers, came back and told me, reading this little volume that you brought to my attention really now makes me want to read the whole trilogy. And a couple of customers that came back to me and said, if this is what the whole trilogy is like, I'm glad I just got this one little volume. I don't need to read anymore. Okay, then we have a completely new acquisition, not a new book, but a new acquisition that I knew was coming into this room. This is the Everlove and Blue-Eyed Years with Pogo. This Pogo Possum. 10 Everlove and Blue-Eyed Years with Pogo. This is Walt Kelly's great creation. Cartoon strip that satirized politics brilliantly. Just brilliantly. I found this at the Brattle just the other day. I'm trying to think of where to put this because I want to just deal with the Transwise books. I found it at the Brattle the other day and snapped it up. I hadn't had it since it first came out. I was overjoyed to have it. Knew as soon as I got it that it would come into this room. Okay. All right. Now we'll start on the normal books themselves. And this first one is a good example of what doesn't belong in this room. Even though some of you will remember me buying it. I didn't haul this thing all that long ago. No, not all that long ago at all. This is Sketches, Criticism, Lay Morals, and Other Essays. This is nonfiction work of Robert Louis Stevenson. And it says volume 24 there, not because he wrote 24 volumes of sketches and essays. God, I wish he did. But because this was volume 24 in a uniform set of Stevenson that came out and that showed up at the Brattle. All 50 volumes showed up at the Brattle. And I picked through them. I, of course, don't want a volume like this of Treasure Island when Scribner's makes an illustrated version. I don't want anything like that. I grabbed this thing because these nonfiction musings by Stevenson are deeply of interest to me. But I know that I don't want them in this volume. I know that I don't want something as bland and with a number on the spine. Can you imagine the heresy? So this is literally a placeholder until I get a nice, big, generous volume of Stevenson's literary nonfiction, his occasional work for literary journals. I would be willing to bet a Boston cream pie that such a volume exists in Scotland or in the UK just in general. I would be willing to bet there's a volume like that out there that I haven't seen that's exactly what I want. And of course, it's pleasantly immaterial anyway, since I have it all on ebook on multiple devices, and in the cloud, so that I can download it to any device and get to it at any time and search it easily without getting up and crossing the little book room to get this book down off the shelf if a certain little someone is nice and comfortably nestled in the crook of my knee and would look on it as a mortal offense if I were to try to move. Under such circumstances, it's really convenient to have all of Robert Louis Stevenson, not just the nonfiction, but all of it, on a tablet of metal and glass, right there at my fingertips. They're really nice to have. But that kind of undercuts the whole idea of having a big book library just in general. So we're going to tiptoe right past that and move on to the next book. Okay, this is a UK hardcover of Frank Conroy's novel, Body and Soul. Beautiful thing. Much prettier looking than the American version. This is the big novel that Conroy's friends and students and acquaintances all knew that he had brewing inside him, all hoped that he would get around to writing. He did get around to writing it. It's the only big novel that he wrote, and it's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. It's the story of a young boy who is a piano prodigy, but he comes from a poor background. His mother is only tenuously holding on to her own mental health and drives a cab for a living. He has no money, in other words. And at first, at the beginning of the book, it looks like that means he'll have no opportunities. But a couple of opportunities come his way, and his talent does the rest. And it's just amazing. Just an amazing book. All right. See, the reason why I'm struggling with these books up here is because that box set that we saw a week ago, that National Geographic box set of animal behavior and wild animals of North America, the box set that I said shouldn't be up on a shelf because box sets have their own shape. They don't need a space on a shelf. It keeps tipping over and pressing against these books when I move one of them. A further demonstration of how it just does not, those do not belong up there. I will deal with it. I will deal with it. You people are going to have to take my word for it. I know you don't, you think I'm bluffing, but when we're done with this room, when we're done with the library tour of this little book room, I'm stopping long enough to fix this little book room. So there won't be any library tours for a week, however long it takes for me to fix this completely. All of the doubles, all of the mistakes, all of that. But anyway, let's move on to a big fat work of history, which absolutely does not belong in here. I have a bookcase for big fat works of history in the other rooms. But this is a collection, sort of like we saw with the Cambridge Ancient History, where it's a whole period, and each chapter is an aspect of that period written by a different historian. And this is about Edwardian England. Which is one of my favorite times. One of my favorite times presided over one of my favorite kings. Believe it or not, I may be the only Edwardian fan left out there. And you scallywags who have often inferred that means I myself am a product of the Edwardian era. I'd kindly ask you to zip it. Okay? But this is great. It's dry in passages. Not everybody can write captivatingly about agricultural reform, but it's essential, I would say. But it absolutely does not belong in here, taking up valuable shelf space when it's just a work of history. It's a work of history that I like. But what is this next one? Oh, okay. All right, wow, this has seen better days. This is by the great Walter Muir Whitehill, a wonderful man who was forever and ever the presiding genius of the Boston Athenaeum, which we mentioned yesterday. And this, he wrote lots and lots of stuff about Boston. He never stopped writing about Boston. And this is a great book for a couple of reasons. Not only because you get his ruminations on each of the figures in the book, but also because it's a blast from the past. Not all of these figures are where they used to be. It's a contentious subject now. No one would have ever thought it would be. And the contention really hasn't made its way to Boston, thank God. But this is Boston Statues, in which there's Leif Erikson with his petite bras, his metal bra, and his shapely knees. Who else have we got here? There's Daniel Webster, but covered in bird poop. And so a lot of the statues in here are covered in bird poop. And quite a few of the others, quite a few of the ones that aren't covered in bird poop. There's William Lloyd Garrison, the great William Lloyd Garrison. Quite a few of the others, the ones that are, all of these are clean now. They aren't covered in bird poop unless it's fresh bird poop. They aren't the way when this thing was made, I think in the 70s. Laureates. It has a laureates tag to it that'll bring back memories for some of you from Boston. This was made in 1970. And in 1970, the city looked like a bucket of crap. There was graffiti everywhere. There was garbage all over the street. There were no laws for littering that were enforced. There were no laws for dog crap, so it was everywhere. And the statues, there was no thought that the statue should be beautiful. Very little thought for that. And as a result, this is a time capsule, because you'd be looking at some of these statues and thinking, wow, that's not actually there anymore. And even if it is still there, it doesn't look like that anymore. But I love it. I love it for Walter Muir Whitehill's commentary. There is Edward Everett Hale, the author of A Man Without a Country. Fantastic. I don't want to harp. God forbid that I be repetitive. But I would point out that when I take stock of this room, the Boston books should all be together. Right? It shouldn't be that I was down on the floor showing you volumes of the Boston Athenaeum and I'm up here showing you Walter Muir Whitehill writing about the statues of Boston. That shouldn't be true. Okay, the next one is one of these little hardcovers. I love these things. They were done, when was this? 70 years ago? 1945. This was done when paper was being rationed, so you got these lightweight hardcover volumes that were in bookstores, but they were printed on something that often was not any better than pulp quality paper, with the result being that they're light as a feather, even though they're hardcover. And I love them. They show up at the Brattle Bookshop here in Boston with a fair degree of regularity. And I found this one there just last year, I think. This is The DA Calls It Murder by Eric Stanley Gardner, where you've got a crusading figure there. That is the new DA at the start of this series, is an idealistic guy who also has a flair for sniffing out murders and figuring them out. I think that's supposed to be a skull up there, but you couldn't always shoot the moon with art budget for these books. I read this book. I probably read this as a mass market paperback, maybe 50 or 60 years ago, but if I did, I completely forgot it. And I read the first book here, The DA Calls It Murder, and fell in love with this, and have been on the lookout, and will continue to be on the lookout for other DA books. I wasn't the only one who fell in love with this. Gardner's fans loved it. They loved the idea of this new crusading DA who has a flair for crime. They love the idea of the city, and also Gardner's just an endlessly inventive writer, so he's always enjoyable to read. And I want all of these DA novels in this form. I don't want them I don't know if they ever had mass market paperbacks. I think they did. But I want them in these old 1940s hardcovers. Although this shouldn't be here. This absolutely shouldn't be here. Just randomly on a shelf with a bunch of nonfiction. Absolutely shouldn't be. Okay, then we have a 2-volume set that has seen better days. I keep this and I refer to it a lot. But I don't know that I'll ever see it again. at the Brattle, of course, would be the only place where I'd see it. I've never seen this at another thrift used bookstore. This is a 2-volume set of the letters of Archie Butt to William Howard Taft and to Theodore Roosevelt, the 2 U.S. presidents whom he served, as an aide, as an office-wearing, outfit wearing. What's the word I'm looking for? It's not outfit. It's it's gone right out of my head. The thing that military people wear. A uniform. I swear. Don't ever sign me up for Jeopardy. A uniform wearing aide just in general. He was not, strictly speaking, a military aide. He was just there to smooth things out, help. And he had the kind of personality that you really want. He was engaged but not obsequious. He was efficient but not prim. So when Roosevelt left, Roosevelt absolutely relied on Archie Butt. Don't tell Archie Butt I said that, but he did. And when Roosevelt left office, Butt was thinking, well, I suppose I'm leaving office too. But Taft had been part of Roosevelt's administration and thought, Taft and his wife thought, what? You're not going anywhere. We need you as much as he did. We need you more than he did. He was, after all, Theodore Roosevelt. He needed precious little help from anybody. We are not. We are normal human beings, so you're staying. And Butt kept up an enthusiastic correspondence with and about these men. Absolutely invaluable first-hand treasure trove of information about the Roosevelt administration, because there's another volume of Butt's letters to and about Roosevelt. And also, especially, the Taft administration. Not that anybody wants such a thing. Not that anybody will ever use such a thing to, I don't know, write a new biography of William Howard Taft in office. Anyway. Okay, the DA Calls It Murder was an apropos discovery for March Mystery Madness, which starts tomorrow. And so is this one, nothing more so. This is Sherlock Holmes. Another paperback volume of the complete Sherlock Holmes with the Sidney Paget illustrations all throughout. And this has double significance. Not only is, of course, this the place where where any kind of mystery madness begins. So whenever I see, a $1 crappy trade paperback like this, I grab it and reinforce it and just keep it and use it, because I've had them fall apart on me. I had one just a couple of years ago that fell apart on me. But not only is this a linchpin for March Mystery Madness, it's also a linchpin for my ongoing 2-person book club with Maybury Book Club, with Matthew at Maybury Book Club. We decided to dovetail our whole of March with March Mystery Madness by reading all of the Sherlock Holmes stories in the month of March. It won't be any forced labor for me, because I've read these stories many, 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 many times. There are probably a dozen out of the 60 that I know verbatim. So, it's going to be a little bit more work for Matthew than it is for me, but I'm happily going to do it. Absolutely. I don't know if I'll use this. I might use just an ebook, so that, once again, I'm not disturbing herself. And then the last book, which is big. So it has to be up on this top shelf or on I have some tall shelves that we'll be getting to later in this library tour. This is a big thing. This is also a relatively recent acquisition. This is the annotated Walden. Who is this? Is this Harvard? Bramhall House. Okay. Well, anyway, this is a lovely annotated thing. Just goes straight through Walden with the text, all appropriate illustrations, and the annotation running on the side. These big annotated volumes can often be immensely enjoyable. Even if you really know the work that is being annotated, if you know that work really well, or I would say especially if you know that work really well, I have found, at least my experience has been, that I enjoy annotated editions more the more I know the book that's being annotated. In other words, the less I need the annotations, the more I enjoy them. I don't know if that's a usual thing, but that is our top shelf here, and that was not a disaster. That involved some reaching off camera, but that was not a disaster. And the next one I won't have to reach at all. I'll be right here. Thankfully, that means I can avoid the step stool, at least for the time being. Good. So, there's no way that I'll do it on the next one. The next bookcase goes up to the sky. I specifically commissioned it that way, so now I'm paying for that. But anyway, that's this for now, so I'm going to wrap this up, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.